The rain in late October has a peculiar way of making the glass facade of the financial district look like a weeping spreadsheet. You are 65 today. You stand on the 42nd floor of the tower, holding a single sheet of heavy beige paper in your right hand. It is not an eviction notice, nor is it a medical report. It is your formal notification of immediate retirement. In the quiet, dimly lit corner of the executive lounge, your thumb brushes against the cold steel of an old mechanical wristwatch, the one your father gave you when you graduated from college 43 years ago. It still ticks with a dry, rhythmic precision, indifferent to the shifting fortunes of the market outside. Through the floor-to-ceiling window, you look down at the street below. A sleek, midnight blue German luxury SUV is idling near the curb, its hazard lights flashing rhythmically against the wet asphalt. Inside that car is Mark. He is also 65. At this exact moment, Mark's hands are gripping the leather steering wheel so tightly his knuckles are turning the color of chalk. His phone is resting on the dashboard, displaying a notification from his mortgage lender alongside an urgent email from his corporate VP about the latest restructuring phase. Mark cannot step out of that car, and he cannot stop driving into this district every morning at 7. He is trapped in a permanent, high-velocity orbit that he built for himself over 4 decades, sustained by the exhausting necessity of maintaining an appearance. You look down at your beige paper, then back at the street. The distance between your silence on the 42nd floor and Mark's panic in the idling SUV is exactly $2,200,000. It is a distance measured not in currency notes, but in decades of calculated, agonizing isolation. Most people watching the market tickers on the wall behind you believe that wealth is an accumulation of things you can see, like the leather seats in Mark's car or the premium zip code of his suburban home. They are wrong. Wealth is the invisible inventory of choices you did not make. It is the luxury of looking at a corporate vice president and feeling absolutely nothing. The screen on your desk flickers, displaying the national net worth distribution metrics updated for the year 2026. The numbers are clean, cold, and utterly devastating for anyone who spent their life trying to look rich instead of becoming free. The crowd down on the street lives by the average, but they are being crushed by the median. They do not understand that the system is designed to skew reality upward, using the hyper-wealthy to mask the quiet desperation of the middle point. You fold the paper once, sliding it into your coat pocket. To understand how you arrived at this window while Mark remained chained to that steering wheel, you have to look past the charts, past the modern economic commentary, and look directly into the cold, mechanical progression of a human life measured in dollar bills. The year is 22, and the world smells of cheap industrial carpet and stale filter coffee. You are sitting on the edge of a second-hand mattress in a rented room that shrinks whenever you close the door. Your net worth is negative $20,000. The student loan statement on your laptop screen looks like an indictment, a 5-digit weight tied firmly to your ankles before you have even learned how to walk inside a corporate hallway. This is the starting line for the decade of the 20s. According to the data from Empower, the median net worth for someone your age is just $6,689. That is the raw truth of the middle point. Yet, the media constantly broadcasts an average net worth of over $127,000 for this same demographic. It is a massive, structural distortion. A tiny handful of trust fund heirs, tech founders, and highly paid influencers skew the mathematical average so high that it becomes a complete fiction for the average graduate. Mark looked at that average number and believed it was a target he needed to project. You looked at the median number and realized the crowd was standing on the edge of a cliff. Mark got his first job at a logistics firm 3 blocks away from yours. His starting salary was $60,000, identical to yours. By the 4th month, Mark moved into an apartment with polished concrete floors and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. He signed a lease on a brand-new entry-level sports sedan, convincing himself that a $400 monthly payment was simply the cost of professional entry. He called it an investment in his personal brand. You stayed in the room with the cheap carpet. You calculated your net worth in a basic, gray Google spreadsheet every Saturday morning at 2. On one side, you listed your assets. $10,000 in a checking account that you saved from your summer shifts, $20,000 in a retirement account you opened on your first day of human resources onboarding. On the other side, you listed the liability, $50,000 in student loan debt. The result was a cold, negative number that kept you awake while the rest of the city slept. Your goal was to hit $52,028 by the time you turned 30. It was a precise figure based on the benchmark set by Fidelity, which recommended saving exactly 1 times your annual salary for retirement by age 30. Since the median income in America for a 30-year-old hovered right around $52,000, that became your North Star. To get there, you had to adopt a philosophy that felt like an intentional social exile. You established 3 absolute laws for your 20s. The first law was the total elimination of consumer debt. You watched your colleagues use credit cards to buy leather jackets and weekend trips to tropical islands, using the interest-free grace periods like financial morphine. They signed up for buy now, pay later services at checkout counters, breaking $20 t-shirts into 4 easy payments of $5. You realized that any consumer debt carried an interest rate higher than 10% was a wealth tax levied on the financially illiterate. You treated the credit card like a loaded weapon, paying the balance to zero every 24 hours. Your student loans had a low interest rate of 4%, so you maintained a steady, systematic repayment schedule without draining your liquid cash reserves. The second law was the imposition of a 15 to 20% savings rate. Mark laughed when you told him you were putting $800 a month into an index fund that tracked the S&P 500. He told you that $80 an hour was what people paid for dinner in the city, and that you were wasting your youth for a statistical probability 40 years away. But you understood the math of the S&P 500's historic 8% return. You knew that if you could maintain that high savings rate on a $60,000 salary, the compound returns by your late 50s would yield a minimum balance of $558,000, scaling all the way up to $2.2 million if your income grew. You wrote those numbers on a post-it note and stuck it to your bathroom mirror. It was your protection against the daily temptation to buy things you did not need to impress people you did not like. The third law was the monetization of expertise. While Mark spent his weekends watching football and drinking craft beer at local breweries, you spent your Saturdays in the public library. You noticed a senior engineer at your firm mention that the entire supply chain department was struggling with database management. You did not know anything about databases. You spent 6 months taking an online certification course, sleeping 4 hours a night. When the department's primary data architect left for a competitor, you walked into the vice president's office with 3 custom data dashboards you built on your own time. Your salary went from $60,000 to $95,000 in a single afternoon. Mark called it luck. You called it the deliberate acquisition of leverage. The clock moves with an accelerating velocity once you cross into your 30s. The median net worth in this decade shifts to $24,580. The average jumps to over $321,000. The disparity is becoming an abyss now, driven by the widening gap between those who own compounding assets and those who merely collect receipts. By the time you turned 35, Mark's life looked like a glossy lifestyle magazine. He had married, moved to an upscale suburb, and bought a home with a $400,000 mortgage. He wore Italian wool suits and had a premium membership at a country club where the entry fee alone could have funded a Roth IRA for 3 years. He was the perfect embodiment of the average, but his spreadsheet, if he had one, would have revealed that his lifestyle inflation was consuming every single dollar of his salary increases. He was making $120,000 a year now, but his net worth was stuck at $25,000, almost exactly at the national median. He was 1 paycheck away from insolvency, hidden behind a pristine lawn and a designer garage door. You entered your 30s with a different target. Fidelity's rule of thumb stated that by age 40, your net worth should be 3 times your salary. With the median income for that age bracket sitting at $61,970, the target was $185,910. But because your database skills had pushed your income to $100,000, your personal target was shifted to $300,000. To achieve this, the sacrifice had to deepen. The conflict was no longer about skipping expensive dinners. It was about resisting the immense social pressure of mid-career expectations. Your first objective in your 30s was to become entirely debt-free, with the sole exception of your mortgage. Mark bought a premium European SUV on a 72-month financing plan because he believed a successful manager should not be seen driving an old, compact car. You kept your 10-year-old sedan, its silver paint fading slightly under the summer sun. Every time you turned the key in that ignition, you reminded yourself that the absence of a $700 monthly car payment was funding the purchase of your future freedom. You took out a modest mortgage on a small, functional home in an older neighborhood, ensuring the fixed interest rate was locked down while the market fluctuated. The second objective was the absolute suppression of lifestyle creep. When your company awarded you a 15% annual performance bonus, You did not call a contractor to remodel your kitchen or buy a premium watch. You logged into your brokerage account and moved the entire net sum into your investment portfolio before the money could even sit in your checking account for 24 hours. You trained yourself to live on the same baseline budget you used when you were making $70,000. This created a widening delta between your income and your expenses, an internal engine that pumped liquidity into your investments month after month. The third objective was the construction of an impenetrable emergency fund. Your 30s are the decade where life loses its simplicity. Parents grow older and require medical assistance. Roofs leak. Children arrive with an endless series of unbudgeted expenses. Mark handled these surprises by expanding his credit line, adding more weight to his financial scaffolding. You chose a more conservative path, maintaining 6 to 12 months of total living expenses in a high-yield savings account. It sat there, earning a steady return, looking incredibly boring compared to the tech stocks Mark was day trading during his lunch breaks. The psychological friction of this period was intense. There were nights when your spouse looked out the window at the neighbor's new swimming pool and wondered aloud why a family with a six-figure income was still clip-saving coupons and driving an old vehicle. You had to sit at the kitchen table, open the gray spreadsheet, and point to the line where the compound interest was beginning to overtake your principal contributions. You had to explain that the pool next door was not wealth. It was 20 years of future labor traded away for 3 months of summer entertainment. You stood your ground, bearing the silent judgment of your peers, choosing the isolation of the spreadsheet over the applause of the neighborhood block party. You wake up one morning, and you are 50 years old. The financial landscape has completely transformed. This is what the institutional planners call the big leagues. The median net worth for Americans in their 50s is $192,964. The average has crossed the $1 million threshold. The top 10% are now completely detached from the rest of the population, lifted by 25 years of equity ownership and rising asset valuations. Fidelity's metric for your 50th birthday is unforgiving. You should have 6 times your salary saved. With a median income of $65,000 at this stage, the standard recommended net worth is $390,000. But for you, with an income that had reached $150,000 through decades of senior management roles, the target was $900,000. Mark's life began to crack during this decade. The lifestyle inflation that he thought he could out-earning finally caught up with him. His children were entering college, and because he had never prioritized a dedicated savings fund, he was forced to take out Parent Plus loans at high interest rates. His home required a complete structural repair that cost $40,000, which went straight onto a home equity line of credit. His company underwent a major managerial downsizing. Though he kept his job, his annual bonuses were eliminated. He was 52, making significant money on paper, but his net worth was still hovering near the national median of $200,000. The vast majority of that was paper equity in his house, money he could not use to buy groceries or pay tuition without borrowing against his own roof. He looked exhausted. The confidence he carried in his 20s had been replaced by a permanent, low-grade anxiety that settled into the lines around his eyes. Your situation was entirely different. Your first goal in your 50s was asset reallocation and capital preservation. The aggressive index fund allocation that drove your growth in your 20s and 30s was no longer appropriate for a retirement that was less than 15 years away. You sat down with your spreadsheet and began shifting a percentage of your net worth into fixed income securities, short-duration bonds, and real estate assets that produced reliable, predictable monthly cash flow. You were no longer trying to beat the market. You were focused on preventing the market from beating you. Your second goal was a precise calculation of your retirement cost baseline. You did not guess what your life would cost when you stopped working. You tracked every line item for 3 years. You realized that because your mortgage would be paid off by age 60, your actual survival cost would drop by 40%. This gives you a definitive target number for your nest egg. You knew exactly how much capital you needed to accumulate to live comfortably without ever needing to look at a corporate payroll again. Your third goal was the exploitation of the government's catch-up contribution laws for the year 2026. The tax code allowed individuals over the age of 50 to inject an extra $8,000 per year into their 401k accounts, raising the total annual limit to $32,500. It also allowed an extra catch-up contribution for IRAs, bringing that limit to $8,600. You maximized every single one of these vehicles. While Mark was trying to figure out how to defer his daughter's tuition payments, you were funneling over $40,000 of pre-tax income into retirement vehicles every 12 months. The gap between your path and the median statistics was no longer a slope, it was a vertical wall. Your net worth crossed the $5 million mark when you were 57. You did not buy a luxury boat. You did not throw a massive party. You went to bed at 10, listening to the quiet ticking of your father's wristwatch on the nightstand. The rain continues to fall on the 42nd floor, blurring the red and green tickers on the terminal across the room. The median net worth for someone in their 60s is $299,920. The average is $1.57 million. Fidelity suggests that by age 65, you should have 10 times your salary saved, which translates to roughly $634,000 for the typical American earner. But your spreadsheet does not follow the standard guidelines. By maintaining a 20 times income multiplier throughout your final years, your net worth stands at exactly $2,200,000. You apply the standard 4% withdrawal rule to your accumulated capital. It yields a reliable, automated annual income of $88,000, entirely independent of any employment contract. And because your major life expenses have completely disappeared, your mortgage is entirely paid off, your old silver car is still functional, and your children are fully self-sufficient, your actual living costs are less than $40,000 a year. The surplus continues to compound in the background, a silent financial engine that will outlive you. You pick up the beige retirement letter from the desk. You take one last look at the street below. Mark's midnight blue SUV has finally pulled away from the curb, merging slowly into the dense, creeping gridlock of the morning commute. He will spend his day in meetings, answering to people 15 years his junior, calculating how many months he can survive if his department is eliminated in the next quarter. He spent 40 years chasing the appearance of wealth, and in doing so, he traded away the only asset that ever mattered, his time. You turn away from the window. You walk down the long, carpeted corridor toward the elevators, your footsteps making no sound at all. You press the button for the ground floor. As the metal doors slide shut, cutting off the view of the trading floor and the corporate logos, you realize that the greatest luxury in the world isn't something you can buy. It is the ability to walk out of a building and never have to return. The journey from a negative $20,000 balance on a cheap mattress to absolute autonomy on the 42nd floor requires more than a basic understanding of compound interest. It demands a willingness to accept social isolation as the price of financial defense. It requires you to look at the median data and understand that if you live like everyone else, you will eventually face the same anxieties as everyone else. The numbers for 2026 are clear. You can either spend your life building a monument to your status, or you can use your capital to purchase your freedom. The choice is yours, but the clock never stops ticking. Look at your own age and your current net worth today, without the filters of social media or societal expectations. Are you honestly building an inventory of invisible choices that will buy your freedom, or are you financing a lifestyle that will eventually buy your time? Let us know in the comments exactly which decade you are fighting in right now and what your true target number is. If you are ready to stop tracking the average and start building an actual foundation for your own autonomy, make sure you subscribe to Veil Finance.